Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lizzie and Justin, and we are turning towards life again. Here we are live on Facebook, and it's wonderful to be here in this very sane making space with you, Justin, for me. And I want to have a moment to say a big welcome to everybody who's listening, everybody who is part of this wonderful listening, this wonderful community of those of us who are interested in these conversations. It's quite something. And I'm in a period of my life, Justin, as you know, where I'm basically not on my computer, not doing anything at all. I'm just breastfeeding and doing all the things that somebody does with a new baby and another young child in tow at the same time. And so coming here is profoundly restorative and sane making to me in the grand kerfuffle of things that's going on behind that door. And so I'm really grateful to be here and really amazed at the source, Justin, that you brought. And as usual, I feel confused by it and opened by it and curious about it and really looking forward to seeing what's here. And I think that's part of why I love this so much, Justin, is that I come in here genuinely not knowing the territory or the terrain that we're going to be in, especially when I haven't chosen the source and haven't had much thought about it. Of course, I've read the source and thought, oh gosh, I'm not sure that what that is, and then read it again and thought, well, maybe it could be this, and so it's led me down a couple of roads, but I honestly don't know what road it will lead me down when you read it to me, when I read it to you, and what will come up between us. So it's very magical that this is the way we do it and that we never know what's going to happen. And I'm really grateful for that. So welcome everybody into that mystery, into that curiosity. And thank you, Justin, for choosing this source today.
Thanks, Lizzie. It's very good to be here, and I really appreciate what you're saying, that in a way that this whole long conversation, in which we're joined by so many people. Hello, everyone who's with us. Also, I'm so glad that you're here with us. Lizzie, is a conversation in not knowing more than it is a conversation in knowing, and it's a conversation of discovery and uncovering and disclosing more than it is a conversation about somehow bringing already what we have to say to the table.
Mm.
And I think I was teaching at a Thirdspace something for our alumni of our year-long coaching program, Lizzie, just before the winter break, and we were talking about this, about discovering together. And in my own path, in the Jewish path, there's a really strong sense that there's a spirituality in discovery, that what it is to be human in its really deepest sense is to be the ones who discover and uncover and reveal and disclose together. And that we can only do it together, really. We never really do it on our own. And so that's exactly what we're doing. So it's not this wonderful source that we'll get to that is the trailhead or the fountainhead for our conversation. It's not like I know what there is to say about it yet either. And I think I know that's what's kept this conversation going. It's a big part of what's kept this
Mm.
conversation going for so long, that it's so fresh, that we're not rehearsing old. There'd be much that's already in our backgrounds that comes in, but we're not rehearsing or re-saying old things. And I also know it's why people want to come alongside us, and be part of the conversation, that there's a process of discovery for all of us. So all of you who are with us, either on, maybe you're on YouTube or on Facebook or in our podcast, um, I know and we know that you're discovering too, as we do this. And there is something, I think, uniquely and very preciously human about the act of discovery, of seeing that the world is, and we are, way more mysterious and way more vast than we sometimes know when we're going about our ordinary everyday routine. And it's very, very life-giving, and also possibility making in real, actual, pragmatic living terms of living, to engage with discovery about ourselves in this way. So it's
Can I also say, Justin, I'm seeing from what you're saying just now as well, and living in this life that I'm living in, the big kerfuffles and tiredness and delusion and craziness going on from sleeplessness and everything. There's something about turning towards life that's not going to solve all my problems of being tired and of not having enough hands and of not knowing how to do things and being out of my depth and not understanding what's happening, and all kinds of problems exist, if you know what I mean, in my house and in my life and in this system I'm in, this little human system. And one thing I know about turning towards life is I'm not going to come here and feel like there's answers to all of the issues that I've got. That's not the thing. But what it is something way more helpful than that, if that's the right word. Like, it's bringing me some kind of restoration that is, of course, completely to do with life, but it's not a problem solving thing. I'm not trying to be fixed by being here. I'm opening into life and letting that be something that holds me in whatever my life looks like, which is a really different thing than seeking out techniques or advice or tips or how to cope with this and what to do with that, which I can do, by Googling something on the internet or something. This is something that isn't that. And I'm really grateful that I know what that is. Because I think there's an avenue my life could have gone down where it was all just about, I've got a problem. How do I make it better? What's the next thing? Like I could just have had a life like that. And so this really rich, extraordinary well of resourcefulness and wondering and curiosity and openness is such a big support when life is really hard and it's not to be solved. Like, so many things happen in life that aren't that, and we try and approach them as if they are that, and that doesn't work anyway. But if we can be in this conversation, it feels to me like it has restoration in it, because it's not about picking something to pieces and making sure that I've got everything sorted out or something. It's just a profoundly different thing than that, and it's deeply supportive for whatever's happening. And so that's my part of my gratitude of coming here is and doing this conversation, is that when life is hard and we don't know what is going on, and we listen here, we come here, we're drinking from something wholly different than the level of the kerfuffles that are happening in the circumstances of our lives. And it's so supportive for my humanness to be here, and hopefully for other people's too.
That's a lovely way of saying it. Me too. And it reminds me that the whole of Thirdspace, Lizzie, from which this conversation flows, and the kind of coaching that we do and teach is also that, which is the same question. It's how might we humans be of support to one another in being in our lives, not in the solving our lives kind of way, although sometimes we do find practical resolution to all kinds of things, but more in the deeper resourcing of ourselves and the having life flow through us, which I think is largely absent from the conversation in our wider culture, which stops at the level of tips and techniques and practicalities, which are all very important. They have their place. I think as we go into this source that we're about to read, there's the same theme will emerge here, which is the commitment to there being something more to us than just surface appearances, and in fact more to everything than just surface appearances, is what we're engaging with here. So we talk and listen in this way, and it gets us in contact with the life-giving underneath of everything. And that then is actually profoundly helpful, even if nothing changes in our circumstance, and even if we don't know how to do anything differently to the way that we've been doing it. So it's lovely to be in this, and it's very, very wonderful to be accompanied by other people. And for all of you who are with us, you're so welcome to tell other people about this, share the possibility of benefiting from this conversation. And also thank you. Some people have followed the support us link on our website this week and written lovely messages and supported us practically as well, which is a wonderful thing. So thank you to you. And here's our source. So this you'll find in our Facebook group, which you're all very welcome to join, on our Turning Towards Life website, and in the notes if you're listening on a podcast on Spotify or Apple Music or, any of those places. It's called Urgent Message to a Friend in Pain. Urgent message to a friend in pain. I have to tell you a little thing about living. I know, but hear me. A little thing I've carried in the dark. Remember when you saw the stars of childhood, when you knelt alone and thought that they were there for you, lamps that something held to prove your beauty. They are, they are, they are, they are, they are.
Urgent message to a friend in pain. I have to tell you a little thing about living. I know, but hear me. A little thing I've carried in the dark. Remember when you saw the stars of childhood, when you knelt alone and thought that they were there for you, lamps that something held to prove your beauty. They are, they are, they are, they are, they are.
I didn't I didn't know that when I saw the stars as a child, that I did have the thought that they were there for me, specifically for me, and that they were held by something to prove my beauty. I didn't have that thought. But I do remember a little the feeling of being very small and being lucky enough to grow up in a family in a circumstance where I wasn't on the edge of survival or in desperation, certainly not very often. I really do remember what this poem and these words remind me of is the feeling of belonging to the world,
Mm.
of not being separate from it, of there being a very straightforward kind of non separation between me and trees and the grass and the sky and I think that that feeling must in some ways predate all of the things that then happen that many of us experience, like going to school and suddenly having to justify myself or prove myself or fit in or, do all of those social things that we have to do that come from being in groups or being in an institution or being measured for something or, all of those kind of things. And as an adult, one of the things that these beautiful words from Joseph Fasano have reminded me of is that the easiest story for me to be in is I'm separate, I don't belong, there's something wrong with me, and somehow I've got to put all that right. And I really understand where that story comes from because it comes from all the times I felt exiled or, pushed to the outside of things, or like I had to prove something, or that people would be judging me, or it comes from all of my self-judgment. It comes from all the times I got criticized for criticism obviously has its place, but for just the very ordinary things of being myself, playing and dancing and running and jumping and I think it comes from a very, very prevalent story in our culture that we are what's the word I'm looking for? That we're incomplete and that the point of our life is to get completed. And that fuels so much of our grasping and grabbing. I have to have the right kind of this and the right kind of that and the right kind of friendship. And it is then such a gift to have these words and to have Joseph Fasano say, "Remember, can you feel your way back to the time when you might even have had the tiniest glimmer that somehow what the world was doing was reflecting back to you its beauty and your beauty at the same time, its beauty and my beauty at the same time, its belonging and my belonging. And if I let myself remember it, I do remember that. Just in glimpses and not so easily in words. And it's a very, very profound relief to feel it, Lizzie. And as I can feel it in myself, oh, I'm not separate from this universe. I'm not separate from this existence. I'm made of it. The stars aren't just there for me, but they are also there for me. It really is along the lines of what you were saying when you were talking about this kind of conversation, which is nothing changes, and yet I feel so much more like I don't have to take up a place in existence. I already have a place in existence, or even I am a place in existence. And we really there's a real paucity of reminders of this for many of us. We get reminded of exactly the opposite all the time. But when do we sit on the bus or sit on the tube and see something, instead of saying there's something missing, you really ought to sort out, and here's how to do it, a thing to buy or a thing to do, that it says to you, you are good, you belong, you are an expression of all of this, you're not separate from it. So I think we can do with this kind of conversation and these kind of words.
Yeah, so I don't have a memory either of seeing the stars of childhood as stars. And but when I thought about this a little bit more, Justin, and in relationship to what you've just been saying too, I felt like there were things when I was little that felt like they were for me, that they were people who were for me, or they were experiences, like you said, nature, bits of nature that were for me, animals that were for me. And when I say for me, I don't mean that I could grab at them or something, but they were there for me. Like they had enough, what's the word? Orientation towards me that had me feel like I was seen by them, like I mattered to them. And I felt like that was where so much of my sense of belonging came from. And of course, that kind of magic that we have as children fades, that kind of capacity for wonder and awe changes unless we cultivate it, unless we practice it. And so for me, this source is such a beautiful reminder of things being for us. And when you were talking, Justin, I had this feeling like I want to say that turning towards life is for you, Justin, and it's for me, Lizzie, and it's for Beth, and it's for Caroline, and it's for Francis, and it's for Alexandra, and it's for Simon, and it's for all the people who I can't list by name, although those are people who I know listen. It's for Carol. It's for everybody who comes here and feels in receipt of this. It's for, so I want to say directly, like turn away from you for Justin, you, Justin, for a second, and turn towards whoever the person is listening through their headphones or on the speakers and say, Sharon, this is for you. And we are for you. Like that's what this whole thing is this part of the magic of the world, is that we can create and be for each other. And the the funny thing for me, Justin, as well, is what this poem brought up for me is things like my auntie Flora, who was my granddad's sister, teaching me how to make rice pudding when I was little. And she let me do things that other people didn't let me do. She let me get the thing out of the oven with the oven gloves on, and she let me pour the milk over, and she let me measure the sugar out, and she let me. And it was because it was for me. She was teaching me for me. And it was one of those things that I think is one of the stars of my childhood, of feeling centered in someone else's gaze and attention and love. And in those alone moments, I can feel that there was an experience that was made for me by someone. And it was a small thing like making rice pudding, which has three ingredients, or four, because if you put nutmeg on the top. And I think that's what the stars are made of for me. It's like a range of, and my little dog, when I was little, she was for me, even though she was for many, many people. I was like, yeah, she's secretly just for me. Like that was the way that I was with her. And it's such a beautiful thing to be reminded that that could be true right now as adults in whatever's going on. So my kettle is for me. My shoes are for me. There's a way that I can be in receipt of what's being provided all the time by life with just very practical things. The sunshine is for me. It's true, isn't it? Like the sunshine is made to keep me alive. And of course, everyone, but I'm included in everyone. And that blue sky and the way that blueness is so beautiful to me as I'm looking out this window, it's for me. And we say this so often, Justin, about receiving our lives and letting life be brought inside and not holding everything at bay and pushing everything at bay, but being aware of the of life being oriented towards us, whatever that is, practical things, big things, spiritual things, people, the sky, the trees. We are included. We belong. And if we can orient to things starting off small and getting bigger maybe every day, what is it what is it to live like that rather than feeling the habitual feeling that I also know so well of, just as you were saying, of feeling separate and different and like there's something wrong and there's deficiency or lack. How do I live that's not my dominant narrative, and that I can bring myself to my life with this cultivation of belonging and seeing that things are for me.
Um, I think for many of us, Lizzie, we've been taught or internalized somehow that to say that something for me is somehow selfish or self-centered and therefore not acceptable. And that makes sense if what I'm saying is this is for me and not for you. I'm going to grab all the sunshine and all that. Um, but I'm really touched by what you're saying, that when we can allow ourselves to experience existence as for ourselves, as part of knowing ourselves, as including everybody and everything, but that not. So this weird separation we get into where somehow it's for everyone but not for me, or maybe it's for no one, because if it was for no one, then I'd be freed of all the complications of it having to be for me. And there's also a very particular way, it seemed to me whilst you were speaking, that it's the nature of being a conscious being like we humans are, this gift of our being experiencing beings who can make sense of what we experience. I have no idea how you experience sunlight and stars and trees and people. I reckon it overlaps at least somewhat with my experience because we can talk and we can be in relationship and friendship and all of that. But your experience will be different from mine. In that way that you can't know whether anybody even sees the colors the same way that we do. We just have no idea and we'll never know. So there's a very profound way in which everything shows up in you in a way that is very, very particular. There is a whole world of Lizzie, a whole world that only shows up in that way because of you. And there's a whole world that shows up in me because of me. And in that way, we really could say that the sunlight is for you and the trees are for you and the dog walking along the street is for you, even as it's for everyone else. If any of us were to discount this line from Joseph Fasano that they were something held to show our beauty, to prove our beauty, if we were to discount the particularity of it because we didn't want to be selfish or we didn't want to be self-centered or something, we deny that you receiving your life and me receiving your life is a one-time event, right? In this particular configuration, this won't happen again. And there really is something to be cherished there, that the story that the world is cold and hard and meaningless and doesn't go beyond its appearance, its surfaces, really, really robs us of. So I really appreciate that language. And it occurred to me whilst you were talking that that means that I thought that there were three parts to this. So there's, I'm not sure I'm going to remember all three now, but one of them is really practicing and attending to the wonder and delight and awe in existence that we might be able to find our way back to from being very little, that we lose as adults very easily and is taken from us by our culture unless we have the conversation and practices and a kind of attention. So that's the first thing. Um, and then the second thing I thought was when you were talking about being taught to make rice pudding, being able to receive the people around us and not just the world, but to be able to really receive others. And that both of those also help us with the third thing, which is we could also be like the stars in the poem for one another. So we don't have to do any of this on our own. I could be the person who is something there for you, something held to prove your beauty or to remind you of your beauty. So I can reflect that back to you. I can attend to you as somebody, as a unique and precious presence rather than treating you like any of the other objects I might come across in the world. And also, I can be one who is for you if I choose, which might be making puddings, or it might be being a kind of person who keeps on showing you and reminding you how precious you are and how unique you are in word and in deed. It takes all of those. Maybe between the three of those, we go quite some long way to undoing our separation and alienation from the world and from one another. And that is when you're breastfeeding and sleepless at night and raising little ones or worrying about the elderly people we care for, or whatever it is, figuring out how to feed ourselves, all the things that we have to do, the frightening things, the difficult things, the things that are going to call on our courage and the things that we might not be able to sort out for ourselves, they all become greatly supported also because of orienting like this to the world and to one another.
I love that, Justin, because one of the things that arises for me in all of this, of course, is well, so if other people could be those stars for me, I can, I must play that role in other people's lives as well. And which again is a way of me excluding myself to think that I'm not one of those people. So there's an invitation here for me to recognize that we all have power in being those stars for one another. And it's so beautiful the way you're talking about attending to people as they are and those around us being given or being bestowed a sense of belonging by being around us. That's a possibility that we can offer by attending and letting ourselves be the stars of someone's childhood. or the star of someone's visit to our home, or the star of going on a walk, or being at the supermarket or something. I feel like we have that power to be with one another in ways that have each of us feel like there's belonging. And of course, it comes back to the work of Thirdspace that we're all up to and bringing as best we can forth in the world all the time, of seeing one another and noticing who each other really is. And like you said at the beginning of this about what you thought this conversation was, is kind of foraying into the beyond of surfaceness. To who I take you to be in a surface level is mostly and probably always completely different than who I would take you to be if I took some time to get to know you, or I asked some questions, or I sensed into your reality. And so it's such a grounding and brilliantly orienting invitation, wondering that we're in, for me, is recognizing that we're all that powerful for one another and for ourselves, and to reflect on the way that we have been seen and the way that we have had people in our lives or experiences or trees or animals or whatever it is that have had us feel like we belong. How that connects us to our own power. Because my Auntie Flora was just a normal person. It wasn't like she was, but to me, she wasn't just a normal person, but to her, she was, I'm sure, just herself. And she was very humble, sweet, kind, straightforward. She didn't have any family of her own and liked to come to our house and talk endlessly and make rice pudding. And to me, that had me feel like I was in the middle of someone's universe. And I know how that felt. And I feel like that gift until I read this poem, Justin, on Friday when you posted it. I hadn't really received that fully. And I probably haven't now, but I received it more than I had before, which is to say, my goodness, I really felt like that was a big thing to be taught how to make rice. Like I was important enough to be taught how to make rice pudding. And she did that. And because probably I said I like boiling eggs or something. And she said, "Ooh, Lovey, I can teach you how to make rice pudding." She used to call everybody Lovey. She's so sweet. So I feel really in receipt of that, and able to wonder about how I can be a person that cultivates that forth for others, and all the ways that I already am doing that, but I don't think that I am. And I'm not holding it reverently enough to know that that's what's happening, and really acknowledging that.
As always, there's 100,000 more things that we could say, but that's a beautiful place for us to end, and it's time for us to end for this week. So, Lizzie, thank you for being one of those people, for squarely and fully being one of those people, certainly in my life, which is one of the great joys of being in this conversation, is feeling seen and held and welcomed and belonging in your presence. And I hope that many of you who are with us feel in some way seen and held and belonging from being in the many circles around us in this conversation. As you often say, Lizzie, we so love hearing from people how you're experiencing this, and you can reach us in lots of ways. The easiest one is to email us hello@turningtowards.life, or Lizzie or Justin. We'd love to hear from you. And we're going to close for today, and all being well, we'll be back same time, same place next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.